Go ahead. Everybody wants to do this, honestly. I guess we'll see how else to do this. Good evening, everyone. We're going to get started. Get everybody's attention. We're going to get started with the town hall. We appreciate everybody coming out Monday evening after Memorial Day week. This is a nice turnout. We appreciate your time, and so we're going to endeavor to use it wisely. I don't know that we'll need the entire 2 hours, but if we do, we have it. Essentially, what we want to do is hear from you as we go throughout and have this conversation. We got queued up several what we call live polling questions. So it will allow you to interact with the questions here and see the responses on the screen so that we can kind of get a sense from the folks that are in the crowd of what the sentiments are as we go through. But otherwise, we are going to try to make a go of this. So if for whatever reason the live polling doesn't work, we're going to go into manual polling because this is a new feature and we've tested it, but hopefully it works. So before we get started, I want to just acknowledge that we've got several elected officials here, several members of our boards and commissions, and so Councilmember Lindenball up front, you can just kind of wave. Councilmember Andy Kurtz in the back there, and then Councilmember Mike Kennedy, I believe, is here also. Did I miss anyone? And then if you are on a board and commission, I know there's more than a handful, just kind of wave your hands so people can get a sense of where you are. Okay. So tonight, we're here to discuss, as a community, the, and then Councilmember Jed Spencer has joined us in the back there. Yes, sir. I'm doing this thing. I don't know what you're doing. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for pointing that out. So I am Mark McAvoy. I'm the city administrator. So what that means in our system of government is I'm not an elected official. I'm appointed by the mayor, and I sit on top of the organization org chart as her direct report that kind of runs day-to-day operations of the city. And so I recognize most faces here, but there are some that I don't. That's okay. We can get to know each other as we go through. So the future of Winterflow, that's why we've invited everybody out to give us some input. Before I do that, sorry, I keep getting ahead of myself. It's not possible to put on events like this without the support of staff and others. And so before we get too far down the road, I just want to acknowledge those folks that help us do that on a regular basis, and including tonight. So take Garcia here, put all of this together, and help us get everything set up. She's the person that you will see if you come into City Hall at the front desk. She's the face of the city, and so we thank you, Tate, for putting all this stuff together. Absolutely. And then I'd also like to acknowledge David Gaynor. David's responsible for putting the live polling together. If it works, David's responsible for putting it together. If it doesn't work, so we're gonna see. But David is our communication specialist. So all of the stuff that you see online or printed up mostly came from David's desk. And then we've got staff here serving as a panel. And do you want Jen to start off and introduce yourself and pass around and tell the audience a little bit about what you do for the city.
My name is Jen Camp. I'm the Parks and Rec Director. Been with the city for a little bit and couldn't do it without these two guys. So, there you go.
My name is Derek Secchi. I oversee Parks and Golf Course Management.
I'm Michael Stevens. I'm the Recreation Coordinator. I deal with the community events, recreation, and park shelter reservations, all the reservations.
Kyle Lexon, Finance and Administrative Services Director.
All right, and so in addition to the 6 folks, me, 7 included, we have Evan O'Malley here. Evan is our IT specialist that supports all of our public meetings, and so again, we couldn't do any of this without Evan's contribution. So now that you know who we are going to walk you through just a little bit of information about Winter Glow and give you a little bit of the reason why we're here tonight to have this discussion. So we've called this the future of Winter Glow because we want to get some insight from the community as to what that looks like. All right. So this is formally called the Winter Glow Spectacular. And so when you came in, if you noticed on the display screens, there was a carousel of pictures. And for most of you, I presume you've all been to Winter Glow. I'm making that assumption, but if you hadn't or haven't, those pictures represent some of the displays that are out at Orchard Park annually as this event takes place. And so what is it? What is Winter Glow? What are we here to talk about? Well, I'll show you a little bit from their own website in just a minute, just to give some of their backstory. I want to speak for them, but just some of the differences, or some of the distinctions, I should say, between the organization that produces Winter Glow and the city are listed up here. So Winter Glow was produced by the Winter Glow Foundation, which is a 501c3, a nonprofit organization that is separate from the city. So the city does not appoint the board members. The city doesn't oversee the board's operation. However, the city does sponsor the Winter Glow Spectacular event. And so you'll see in some slides downstream of this, that includes financial support. It includes some operational support, and it includes hosting it in Orchard Park, which is on the north side of the freeway. And if you've been there, you know where that is. And the event typically runs from late November to early January on an annual basis. From 2019 was, I believe, the first year that it occurred here in Liberty Lake. So let's see if I can. Oh, that's okay. We'll get you that information. I was just going to take you to the Winter Glow website, which essentially had the information that I just shared with you. Sure. No. Okay. So early this year, January, first couple of weeks of January, when I say we, the city staff was approached by the Winter Glow board. And the signal that we got through that communication was that an ending is coming to Winter Glow. And so the request was, let's set up a meeting so that we can discuss ideas and options. And you see that took place roughly January 16th or so. Fast forward to January 29th, approximately 2 weeks later, and we received another message from the board that they had voted, and they had voted to dissolve the event. And in addition to that, they had offered to the city the lights, the displays, the containers that they're stored in, and the name to the city for $25,000. That was the end of January. They've since, and we'll talk about more downstream again, but just to let you know, the board has since voted subsequently to change that offer to not include the name. But the lights, the displays, the containers are all still included in the offer for $25,000. So what happened between January 29th and today? Well, for a while, there was a period of discovery where the board and the city staff were communicating back and forth. The city was asking questions, like, what are your expenses? What are your revenues? Where does all that come from? What is the inventory? What condition is it in? Where is it stored? Those kinds of questions. And so it took a while to get all of that information firmed up. And so we, at some point, put together a presentation to make sure that the council was aware that this conversation was happening. And then in April, I believe it was April 6th, we had a workshop to let the council know what the offer was and what the discussion had been up to that point and what our recommendation was. And if anybody was at that meeting or saw it on live stream or recorded, you'll know that the staff made a recommendation to the council to not take the board up on that offer. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go as well. And so, over the history, going back to 2021, what does it look like with respect to contributions flowing from the city of Liberty Lake to Winterglow for the production of the event? You can see on the table that all told, for those 5 years, the bottom right number is just short of $130,000. And that comes from a variety of sources, which are labeled on the top there. The 2025 number is in red, because although that amount was approved by the council, it has not been distributed yet to Winterglow because it is a reimbursement type of request. So had the board put on the event this year and submitted receipts, we would have reimbursed them $25,000, assuming they were qualified. So that's why that's in red. But you add that into the mix and we're at 130,000. Before I get too far north of this slide, Kyle, is there any context that you'd like to provide?
Just really briefly, you can see ARPA. ARPA was the one-time funds, for those that you don't know, the COVID-19 related funds that were distributed by the federal government to the state of Washington, to all 50 states. The Department of Commerce then distributed those based on population to each city. The city received roughly $3 million of that, and we distributed about, I want to say about $600,000 to 13 local nonprofits in 2021. So of that, 20,000 went to Winterglow. The next one is just general materials and services. That kind of thing needs too much more explanation. The lodging tax fund, so we have a lodging tax advisory committee that meets a handful of times a year to distribute and then receive applications for tourism related activities. And so Winterglow falls into that eligible use category based on the activities that they provide and the clientele that they receive coming not just from Liberty Lake, but from the surrounding area. And so the lodging tax is a portion of the tax received by the hotel, goes into this fund, and we distribute those out to local entities that are eligible to carry out those activities.
Any questions about that before we move on? Yes, ma'am.
I do have a question about what falls under materials and services. Is that just like electricity? Is that? Oh, God. I just do have a question about the materials and services. What does that encompass? And is it just electricity? Is it city staff, hours? And if it includes, depending on what it includes, does that mean that Winterglow couldn't reimburse for anything on top of that, as far as it does include additional materials and services?
It could, but these are related to the delivery of, the event, but just costs incurred by the city, so potentially, Vista, so, energy related costs. But any potential snow removal in and around the area, any potential repairs, to the infrastructure in that location that wouldn't be directly funded through Winter Club. But just been an assistance from the city to carry out, the event.
So is that just like standard park maintenance that would be done anyways?
Yeah, generally, but it may not happen but for Winter Club.
Any other questions on this slide or this information before we move on? Okay. So it was pointed out, to me that I had missed something. And so going back to this slide. So the question was, why did the board make a decision to dissolve? I'm not going to try to speak for the board. What I can tell you is that the city did not initiate this conversation. The board approached the city, and the information that we received essentially was that board members were stepping away, volunteer bases were dwindling, material costs were going up. There was another one. Oh, the partnership with Spokane County, which provides some of the labor through the Geiger facility, was in question of being renewed. So in the communication, in that discovery period that I mentioned here, those were the general comments that we gleaned out of that information. But I don't want to speak for the board, other than to tell you those elements were in the email exchanges and the discussions that we had with the board as this discovery was happening. And so what do the contributions look like going forward if the city is the producer of the event? Because as we framed this conversation, certainly with our initial workshop with the city council, it was, does the city take Winter Glow up on its offer and become the producer of the event? So that's kind of the context that this slide is reflecting information based on. And so if you saw that initial workshop, you know that that materials and services column number was significantly higher during that presentation. We've since taken a second look at that. With time and more ability to research comes more precision. And so we think the numbers more closely represent what you see now in this presentation. And so we also added a fifth year to this analysis so that we can match the 5 years that we looked in the look back in the history to get a 5-year comparison. And so with those two changes you see there, that the bottom right figure looks like about $480,000 for the city to become the producer over that 5-year period. And again, we'll stop here and allow anyone to provide any additional context, whether it's on any of these columns. We'll allow for any questions to be asked, because we want to make sure that everyone understands the basis for now coming to this discussion and trying to get community input. So we have a question in the back.
I haven't been a volunteer at Winter Glow for a number of years. Is that labor fee now not dependent on volunteers anymore? This is strictly people who will be salaried.
Yeah, these would be compensated individuals from the city with the hope that we could potentially still recruit a volunteer base, but with the understanding that some of the dialogue that we've had over the last couple of months with Winter Glow, that's becoming harder and harder to rely on. And so, yes, we get volunteers, fantastic, that number may get reduced. But budgeting for, let's call a worst case scenario where we don't get any volunteers or a few volunteers that are potentially unreliable. We still have an event to carry out that needs to get done and needs labor hours assigned to it. So that would be a high-end cost of what we think it might be to deliver winter glow. And then in the first table there, the materials and services, you'll notice that that's quite a bit increased from the last table. Obviously, we would need to cycle through updated displays, and so we'd have a lot more capital costs if the city were to take this on, versus being kind of a support mechanism for winter glow.
And a point of clarification, Mark, you used the term winter glow board dissolve. That I don't think that's accurate. There's many members of the winter glow board that are here. Board is not dissolved. I would make that clear.
Yeah, and again, I can't speak for the board. I don't know whether the board has dissolved or not. The board voted to dissolve the event. That's the language that was used in the communication we received. We are dissolving this event in Liberty Lake.
My name is Rich Riley. I do sit on the board, and I've sat on the board of Winter Glow for the last 11 years, going on 12. And we'd like to really thank Liberty Lake for hosting Winter Glow out here. Been a lot of fun, we've met a lot of good people, and we love doing it. But as time goes on, we all got older, you know, and some of our board drives in from Caldwell. Another one, I'm in Area Heights, basically, Ponderosa. And so travel time is to Liberty Lake, but this event takes a while. We're not gonna dissolve, we're just downsizing to where we can manage the displays that we do. This is a year-round event out here, is what I took us. We had a golf tournament to put on by Mark that we worked on for months. And then we had a really nice dinner that was put on also, that took months to put on. So it took a whole group of us to do it, and that group is getting smaller. And so we just decided to step back and do a smaller displays. Help out Mark Peterson at his display. Go Manitoba, help them do a display. And maybe one in Colville, just a small display. So we just didn't want to walk away from Liberty Lake and take all the displays, because it was built for Liberty Lake. So when we leave, everything that you've seen in the park will stay with the park. We will build new displays and buy new displays. So that's where we're at. We run a budget between 30, and last year we hit 60 grand is where we were at. So that's what the budget we run on. And that includes $10,000 that we pay to have the Geiger work crew come and help us take down and set up. You guys have some great volunteers that are still part of the that live in Liberty Lake. Danny Chase, he does 3 displays by himself, 3 very large displays. You got Damian Johnson, who does 2 very large displays. They're both gonna stay. You have Lenny, I don't know if he's here, but he's a great hand. And several other people, I apologize if I miss. Corinne here, she is on the board. She's built a lot of displays, maintained a lot of displays. And then Mark was on the board, helped us, all the sponsors, helped us, you know, he was there every day in the park. Rain, showers, rain, shower, sunshine, and I just want to say thank you. And the board says thank you for your hosting us.
So Rich, we appreciate the context, that's helpful. Before we move on, and to sort of clarify Kyle's earlier point, as you came in and signed in, there was a column on there that asked if you would like to volunteer. So let's say everybody in this room says, yep, I'm a volunteer, and when we call you, assuming that the city is producing this, you sign up for a time slot. That takes that number, 363,975 and dramatically reduces it. So again, to Kyle's point, we're budgeting as if we are hiring someone to be responsible for this, because right now, that's the only assumption we can make until we have better information.
Question on that.
Yes.
This chart doesn't seem to include the offsets of the lodging tax or donations. And that amounted to about 35,000. Are you expecting those to simply go away?
So the city could potentially apply for the same lodging tax, and that would offset a number of this. This is just the gross number, the dollar amount that it would take from the event.
Quick questions, I don't need a microphone. You will apply for lodging tax, is that correct? So you're entitled to it.
We're entitled to it. We have a surplus in that fund right now. And then it would really be up to the city to make that decision. My assumption would be this, but it would be hard to say to what extent we would apply for, if it would be labor, if it would be materials, if it would be a portion of all of it. That's just information that I can't, I guess, estimate at this point.
So as we go forward, just to make sure that, for the recording purposes, for those who are going to be doing this afterward, we need to get a mic to you if you're going to ask a question to make sure that we understand the question and the answer. So before we move on here, are there any other questions?
Two things. First, I'd like to thank the gentleman from the board for putting everything in the context for us, and everybody from the board here for their work on this. It's just been outstanding. So thank you very much for that work. Number two, I heard the gentleman say that they were using Geiger work crews to assist in setting up and breaking down. Are they still doing that, or was that a problem with them continuing?
No, they're still doing it, correct, and they'll be available next year. As long as Geiger is up and running, we will have, the work crews will be available.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what the cost of those are, but if anybody's interested, the Airway Heights Correction Center also runs multiple work crews out there. They do contracts also. I don't know if there's a cost difference, but it might be worth taking a look at.
Any other questions before we move on?
I was wondering, Kyle, if you can tell us how much money was from corporate sponsors? The Winter Club, like Greenstone, STCU, that type of thing.
So the only sponsorship that I can speak to is from the city, and that was 10,000 a year, and that was recently increased to 12,000. Is there anybody from Winter Club that can speak to the corporate sponsorships that they were able to round up?
So, the names.
80.
Sure. I apologize, that's it. So over the years, Ace Hardware here in Liberty Lake has donated to us Action Apparel, Action Material, Adams Tractor, Albertsons and Yokes, who's both donated to us. I'm trying to look for the big one. Greenstone. SDCU. Yeah, Spokane Teachers Credit Union. Lots of individuals have donated to us. City of Liberty, of course. So we would make this available
you know, the sponsors, and Mark is our great sponsor and chair. And, you know, so he would probably know the ones in Liberty Lake. Rosars is donated to us. You know, so there's a lots of individual. You know, Spokane Valley, gave us $37.50 last year out of their hotel motel tax. So there's lots of individual sponsors and corporate sponsors.
Quick question, you mentioned that there's a surplus in the hotel tax, can you tell me what that is?
So pre-COVID, the city was regularly receiving these funds and then expending them in the next year. Based on the demand, we had 7 different entities usually, applying for these funds, and they were generally competitive. On the heels of that, the demand for the funds decreased post 2020. We have seen that pretty much all the way bounce back, I would say, as of last year. And so I think as entities become aware again, these funds are out there, they will start to become competitive again. But we do have a surplus from the last couple of years.
So what is the surplus? How much money do you have?
So right now we have about $220,000 in that fund. And at the end of this year, we'll probably have about 150. So that number will gradually reduce. If nothing else happens, that number will gradually reduce down to being competitive probably in the next 3 years. That's it.
Thank you.
Follow up on Katie's question, I think she wanted to know how much total was the corporate sponsors kind of contribution from last year.
$56,000. And excuse me, that was everything.
Oh, there.
Yeah, the city, the hotel tax, sorry about $56,000.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay, seeing none, I want to also acknowledge, I saw, Councilmember Dunn arrived and joined us, and he's in the back here, and I thought I saw Councilmember Van Orman, but I know other shit has joined us as well, so thanks for coming out, council members. So specifically related to the labor, and this is where I want Jen and Derek and Mikkel to provide some additional context. That number that we talked about here, being able to get more precise as we know the number and the extent of volunteer hours that we can count on. As we were going through the discovery, determined that the best guess, because we got different numbers at different junctures of the conversation, but throughout all of it, we think that we have a pretty solid number here of what it takes to put this on from the beginning of whenever the start of the setup is to the end of the tear down every year to be about 1,770 hours. And that includes all volunteers, that includes the Geiger work team, that includes board members. That's what we think the best estimate is based on the information that we've been able to share. And so when we look at that number and say, okay, how would we be able to create that number from existing staff with the City of Liberty Lake in the Parks and Recreation Department? If you look, and these numbers on the right came directly from a workforce analysis that our team did. And these are projections, but projections of the current year. So November of 25, December of 25, and then January of 26. And so if you look at the capacity being allocated, it means that we are 100% allocated. So the only option for us to make that 1770 would be to work overtime to cut some activity that's currently happening, or to hire more people, whether that's as employees, as contractors, a combination, or some combination of all three of those. And so in that discussion, we determined that that wasn't going to be feasible. And so we are going to propose, if the city takes this over as producer, that we need to hire at least one additional full-time person to manage this event. So I'm gonna hand the mic over to, or actually, we can pass that mic down to Jen. If there are any questions regarding the labor, or the estimates, or any of that, these folks here will be happy to address this.
Go back to the slides and for the donation for $10,000. But like 2024, $12,000, they keep them as, we got donations of 56, so. Some clarification.
Sure, not all, Kyle clarify that.
So what you see here is donations just from Liberty Lake. So they have a whole host of other, activity from sponsors that made up their all for sponsorship.
Okay, so that's just not reflected on. the chart.
This is purely, contributions made from the city to the Winter Glow event.
If you could go forward to the hours slide again, thank you very much. Okay, so you're showing us what your capacity is for November, December, and January, and how those hours have been allocated. What is your peak capacity? So for example, during the summer, are you using more hours than that?
I'll defer that question to either Derek or Jen.
And the tag on this, where do those people go? Where do those hours go?
I mean, they're just gonna vary with how many days are in the month and how many staff are working those days. I'm not sure that I fully understand the question.
Do you have additional hires during the summer months than you do during November, December, and January?
We have 4 seasonal on golf course. No, full seasonal. We have one person,
Just one?
seasonal.
Okay, thank you.
Part of the discussion was, how do we factor the possibility of bringing seasonal help in for this period to smooth off that peak? And part of the challenge that we've experienced as an organization is it's hard enough currently in the current environment to find seasonals during the summer. That all went into the analysis of it would be more difficult to find them during this period based on our experience. And if anyone wants to follow up with some context, feel free to do that. But that was part of the analysis that we did to come up with this capacity and allocation match. We see. Any other questions? All right, so with that, we have arrived. We've been asking questions throughout. That's what we wanted to do. But now we've reached the audience participation portion of the town hall. And so I'm going to turn the mic over to David Boehner to help describe what's going to happen, and then to kick that off. And then I'll return for you.
We're going to attempt to do some live polling by use of your cell phone. The City of Liberty Lake subscribes to a survey service, which recently adopted this new feature that allows us to do cell phone live polling. All indications are that we are very likely the first client to use this resource. We're going to see if we have figured it out correctly, and if you can provide your voice through your cell phone. Everybody take out your cell phone, we'll be showing up the QR code for you to use here in just a sec. Hopefully, if you scan this, if anybody is not getting a direct, link to the start of a poll, and you know, you should be getting like a picture of the winter glow with the Christmas lights and tree and stuff like that, very good. We were not getting that earlier this morning. We noticed some things in the system that the creators of the system did not know about until we were in this. Is anybody, okay, see if we're still trying to get that.
There's no rush, take your time, we have plenty of time to go through this, so don't feel like you have to rush or miss out on any of your
We've
questions.
got the room booked till midnight, so we're good.
No, thank you.
Yeah, so if you, you open your camera, you'll need to take it off of like pro mode or anything like that, but on just regular photo mode, you should be able to hit it using that QR code.
Should be able to link up on slide.
Does everybody somebody scan the QR code? Can you take that off? Raise your hand if you have not scanned the QR code. Against no one.
Sometimes. Usually I think so. And also-
If you know in right to that segment. Are we all there now?
Oh, no, it's here. And mine was dead, but.
If you pay with a rotary phone, this will not work. Switch to. Hopefully you're seeing question one. Otherwise. And when you see this question yourself, you'll be given a couple options for this question. You will know that in the city limits or outside the city limits. Not only do you need to click on inside or outside choices, goes down a little bit further, scroll down, there's going to be another button that says submit. You need to hit submit in order for your vote to be counted.
And it doesn't matter if you live inside or outside, that doesn't disqualify your answer, we just want to get a sense of who's here from where. Because this is a regional event, we hope to draw people from outside the city.
Okay, we got 44 people who voted. 45.
I think we gotta push for a year's free subscription, and we can send them results from this as the inaugural user of this.
Looks like we have one person still not voting, you don't have to. Does anybody still vote? Raise your hand for still voting in this one. Hey, we're gonna open. 5 more seconds, one, okay.
You.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, show results.
$75 to the last. All right, so everybody get the hang of it, that's kind of the break-in question.
Question 2, again, pick one selection per question. How important is it to you that the Winter Glow Spectacular continues in Liberty Lake? After you make your selection, scroll down to the bottom of your phone screen, click on that submit button. Results.
All right, so, Evan, you got to go down, show me the piece. Go down. Say 95. So at least 95 people in this room consider this to be somewhat important. So before we move on to the next one, would anybody like to just verbalize why you feel it's important? I don't care how you voted. Why, if you voted for one of those three, what about it makes it important to you? I'm gonna start here, then I'll come back here.
My name is Bob Merrill, and my wife and I just moved here from Bellingham in December. And it's important because it's a community building event, makes it feel like home.
I totally agree. I've been here 7 years and, with a sense of community, and if you haven't been to the opening ceremony where Santa Claus comes to the park with a full police escort, and you see the kids and the kids in the high school singing as you walk around with different displays, if you don't get a sense of community here, you must be dead. It sends chills. That type of thing going on here in the United States.
That lovely lady was my neighbor. Good job, Nancy. I think it's extremely important. It's what makes the Lake special. We live here for a reason. And part of these community events is what draws us as a community together. And I got to see Winter Glow for the first time. My husband and I just moved back. I'm home. Last year, and to see the smile on the little kids' faces and then just running, rampant through all the beautiful displays. If that doesn't melt your heart, then you got an iceberg somewhere. So I think it's very important.
Yeah, I would just echo what everybody else said, and the other thing is, as a child growing up, my parents took us to many of these types of events, and they were always special and cherished, especially at that time of year. And we grew up on a street where every one of us decorated our houses and had trees and lights and stuff like that. And it is really about giving our children that same eye-opening, glowing experience. And so that's what I love so much about it.
Katie McHenry, and I have 3 girls in the CV school district, and we moved out here in 2015 for that sense of community, and my family loves Winter Glow. The girls get so excited every year for it. You bring the whole family, grandma, grandpas, friends, and my daughter's Girl Scout troop sells the hot chocolate there, and I mean, we go all the time. It's just a great community event.
It was great hot chocolate too.
And I'll just share, I'm not making my opinion on this, I'm just here to help facilitate your dialogue. City has a podcast, the Liberty Lake Deep Dive, we've been doing it for 2+ years, we've had 55 shows. A year and a half ago, we did a show on Winter Glow, Mark Sabo was my interviewee on that one. 55 shows, and it's still one of the top 3 most listened to shows, the show about Winter Glow.
Tell them about the hits on the advertising. What it is?
The Facebook posts?
Yes, for this meeting.
Okay, for this meeting. Couple of years ago, I started to put Winter Glow Wednesday photos up during December time, showing some of the photos you saw as you came going in. Those were very popular or Facebook, visitors. A couple of those became some of the most watched, most viewed, Facebook posts we have ever had on the city's Facebook site. When we advertised this meeting, the first advertisement we put on this meeting about 3 weeks ago, that advertisement about what happens to Winterglow in 2025 has now passed 40,000 Facebook views. By far the most views we have had on any of our Facebook posts. I'm happy when we get 1,000 views. This thing got 40,000. Some of you were one of those 40,000 views, I think.
My name is Robert. We know how many people go to Winterglow each year. Is there some way to ascertain attendance? And do businesses in the area benefit, or have they said it benefit from people going to Winterglow and going to get dinner or something like that? Is there a type of benefit to businesses?
So the information that I can share with you is at this point anecdotal. I don't know that we have hard data, but some of the input we've received from the folks who are paying most attention to this have said, absolutely, we're getting tons of people visiting and going through the displays. How much of that is finding its way to local businesses? I don't know that we can say that with any degree of accuracy. Although, on tomorrow night's council agenda, we have an item up for discussion that, if implemented, will allow us to tell you and us and everyone else precisely what that number is for not only Winterglow, but for any other event or just day or geographic area that we want to. So we're delving into the territory of more data-driven decision-making, and so that's one thing that I would say, assuming that gets implemented, we will be able, if we have a conversation like this next year, to be able to give you precise numbers.
So, Liberty Lakes, history, you go back into the early 1900s, was this little playground for Spokane. And doesn't Winterglow kind of fit into that? Legacy?
Yeah, it's true.
It's part of it.
Hi, I'm David. I manage most of the social media posts that you see for Winterglow. And I can tell you, I do social media for a couple of organizations. There is no buzz like the buzz that we get from when I do the countdown, the number of days. You guys have seen that if you're on Facebook. The buzz that we get from that is tremendous. And having been a resident here since 1990, I can tell you that as far as community building events, that Winterglow is probably the most fun that I have as a parent, as a grandparent, and also to volunteer with in all the years that I volunteered for the numerous organizations in town. I think it's extremely important for the community.
And hi, my name is Kim Schmidt. Just want to bring it back to the question real quick, why I voted that it's important that Winterglow stays in Liberty Lake is I'm a neighbor to the Orchard Park. And as a childless adult who moved from an area about 7 years ago that didn't have to deal with things like seasonal affective disorder from getting dark so early, I look forward to going down and walking through the park a couple nights a week. So it's just helpful to me at that level.
Okay, David, we've got one more back here, taking the back row.
I live across the street from the city, so I'm not actually in the city, I'm across the street in the county. And I didn't really vote where I was because I couldn't make my technology work. But I was approached, I was a corporate donor. And I was approached by a client of mine who came into my office and said, here, we do this cool thing. And I said, well, no, I've been to Winterglow. And she said, well, here's how we do it. And so I queried her about who's it for, who benefits from it, what happens, how does the city let this
private organization operate on their property. And it dawned on me that it was not unlike a men's club or a ladies' club being big patrons of the golf courses. Without the men's clubs, without the women's clubs, without people who come and have tournaments, which are all private, without them coming and using the city's property, and without the city, sponsoring those kinds of things, those private entities wouldn't happen. So I was encouraged to make a donation based on I think, a pretty grand idea of public-private partnerships. And maybe they're not legal partnerships, but they're cooperation that everybody benefits from. And so that's what motivated me to write a check.
Any other comments before we move to the next question?
Is Winter Glow the only event the city does, or are there other events?
It's a good question. I'm gonna pass that over to our Parks and Rec Director for it.
So we work closely with other groups to put other events on during the summertime. I don't think any single one of our events are solely the city's event. There are many other players that volunteer on this, as long as the Rotary and so forth.
Others. All right, David.
Next question, get the cell phones out. Do you support the city of Liberty Lake taking over the management of the Winter Glow Spectacular? Yes or no? Click your answer on submit, bottom of your cell phone screen.
You have a perhaps option.
Right.
Is there a perhaps option?
We want to look into it.
You want to know your rights.
You define management as you were using it in the question. Management versus doing the whole thing.
So what has been offered is from the board to the city is to purchase the displays, the lights, the containers, for putting on Winter Glow in Orchard Park as it has been put on since 2019. So when we say management in this case, we're saying that instead of the Winter Glow board producing that event, the city of Liberty Lake would produce that event.
So I'm supportive of this, in the sense that I think it's important. I don't think it's extremely important. And the monies allocated for this event, are they gonna be taken from something else, like say the school? Like band.
There's a future question.
We can have a question related to that coming soon.
Because that would hinge on my answer.
So are there any other questions that may help answer this? And Greg, it looks like that wasn't a satisfactory answer. Is there something we can help clarify?
Managing it doesn't necessarily mean using city resources to do the whole thing.
To the extent, so I don't wanna monkey with this.
Somebody needs to coordinate it, going to show project management.
Right. So until,
That's pretty much the question, or you mean do all the labor.
so what I mean is, if you can remember back to the slide that talked about contributions for Winter Glow, if the city was the sole producer. If you go to the bottom right, that number was $480,000 over 5 years. That's whatever it takes to put on the event as it's been put on since 2019. That would be encompassed in that estimate of $480,000 over 5 years. That's what we're asking. Are you interested in the city taking over that responsibility or not?
And city council members, this is gonna be just like watching the results of the election. Go ahead, Sean.
So 85-15-ish. All right, so Dana was right. He doesn't owe me a signed autograph photo of the mash gas. Because that's what we bet on whether it would be yes or no.
You guys were at a Swiss autograph.
Does anybody want to share any insight into this? We're not wanting to take sidetracks necessarily at every question, but just interested if you want to share some information that you would like us to know. This is your town hall. It's not for us to sit here and talk to you to listen. We want to hear from you. And so at the question juncture, we want to get insights if you care to share them with us. We would love to hear them. There's no pressure on time. We still have 59 minutes. And so if anybody wants to share any insight in this question, we would love to hear from you.
I think that's one excellent question there about the mines itself, and so my question would be, do other budgets get reduced to support this itself, or not?
So that question is coming. The answer, before we get to the question, is possibly. But as you're pulling levers, it's possible that something, if, assuming nothing else changes, right? You could reduce other expenditures, you could find other revenues, you could entice corporate donors, you could get volunteers and drive that number on labor down. There's all kinds of levers we can pull. But a possible answer is yes to that question, but it's not the only answer. Are we ready to move on? All right.
Question number 4. City takes over the Winter Glow Spectacular production. Where would you prefer that it takes place? Select one answer. Make sure you hit submit at the bottom. If you think everybody's voted, let's see the results.
So there are no right or wrong answers here. If you happen to, we're not trying to help you. If you wanted something other than orchard, would you care to share some thought behind that so we understand that sentiment?
So I love Orchard Park because I live in the river district, but I thought in order to be more inclusive with the rest of the city, I thought possibly distributing it throughout the city, we could potentially get other volunteers in the other areas of the city. So that was my.
All right, any others? Yes, if you said something other than the current location, was the question. All right, looks like we can move on to the next one.
The city takes over the Winter Glow Spectacular production. Which of the following would you most prefer to see added?
Reread that.
Thank you. If the city takes over the Winter Glow Spectacular production, which of the following would you most prefer to see added? Vote for one, click submit at the bottom of your screen.
And just to clarify, I prefer another option not listed here could mean nothing. choose that as your answer.
We vote for more than one.
We would like to know the most preferred thing. By choosing only one thing, it also doesn't mean that over time, potentially that more of these things could be added, but we want to know the most preferred thing now. That's the intent of this question.
Last call on this one. Still have a few more votes at the end. Results.
So I just want to say Derek made us put the ice rink option on there because he's on hockey. So. Okay, so we have a significant percentage of I prefer another option not listed here. Let's hear some insight. What are you thinking here?
So I prefer another option. It's pretty simple. If it's revenue producing, do it. If it's a cost to the city, no. That's a good point. Exactly.
More or less the same comment, but if you're already struggling to produce the status quo, don't make it bigger, more complicated, more expensive the first time out. And I can tell you, as I live over near there, that TT's Brewery opened up shortly before the winter glow season last year. And then they closed. During winter glow, they couldn't make it. They weren't, and that doesn't necessarily connect to winter glow. Obviously, that could be their own internal issues. But that was a restaurant brewery right there looking out at winter glow, and it shut down and has not yet reopened.
I picked something else because I really wanted to say you need to do all that stuff. But really, the underlying thought with that is, that opening ceremony that happens is incredible. It really is. It is so cool, and it's great for kids, it's great for adults. I've taken, my family live out of state, we've done it several times. It's something always on our list. But, we were just talking, like, people have to be able to, like, get a bite to eat and have a hot cup of coffee or cocoa every single time, not just that first night, because it needs to become an experience. Exactly. It should be this magical destination experience every time. And I feel like it's possible. I truly feel like it's possible. And I would love to see the city take it over, just because I think that it would kind of streamline things and make things a little bit simpler to happen. But I also don't think that, I think that the city could do a great job of collaborating with other businesses in town to, give a coupon for Tuesday nights to go to the Thai place after you go to Winter Glow, to like really promote not just Winter Glow, but the city itself.
Any other comments before we move on to the last question?
Okay, last question. Anybody care to take one? Yes, and what the topic might be. If the city takes over the Winter Glow Spectacular production, which of the following would you most support to cover the costs? Again, pick one. Make sure you scroll down and hit the submit button at the end. Well, this is the question that is generating the most amount of thinking. But 5 more of you still thinking on this one. 4. 3.
So we're hoping and supporting something not listed here. Let's hear what you have to say about these, because this is where the rubber meets the road, right? It doesn't mean, again, to answer, and sir, what's your name in the back corner?
Rob,
To answer Rob's earlier question, it doesn't mean that one of these things is going to happen. We're looking for preference. There are a lot of levers to pull, and so don't get the sense that we're going to take this information and that's the answer, right? We still have a lot of work to do on this. Which I saw a hand, but I start with Ken.
Hey, I'm just thinking along the lines of something like a concession stand where you can sell items like hot chocolate and little snacks and stuff at a pretty decent profit. And then potentially even like a donation box where people can just put in a few dollars. It's not gonna solve all the problems, but it's helpful.
I think that, the folks that come to pay the nominal fee, maybe. I've attended more than one of these over the years, one in Boise, one in Maryland, and both of them have a nominal fee. And I realize that may eliminate some people, but, maybe there's accommodations for that too.
For years, my husband was with Kiwanis and they sponsor Christmas in the Park every year in San Jose. It's been going on forever. And they have Kiwanis people, have a booth and they sell Costco hot dogs and popcorn. They make a fortune, an absolute fortune. If we had something like that to kick in along with volunteers and a corporate sponsorship.
I was similar to that idea too, not only concessions, but if we have food trucks, there's lots of food trucks in the city that we could park down there. We have an awesome pavilion that's covered with picnic benches already not being used. Several times as a family, we've gone down there and the kids are just starving hungry because it's dark and it's ready. I mean, it's dark at 5 in winter, right? It's dinner time. So much, we could buy $30-40 worth of food for the kids and stay there, and that could be helpful for the food trucks to have a nominal fee to help support that.
Oh, thanks. I think what I'm gonna say kind of reflects what a lot of people are talking about here, but really, there's 2 levers that have to be pulled in here. One of them is how do you reduce the cost, and the other is how do you increase the revenue. So bringing in things like food trucks, if we charge them to be doing craft booths, that kind of thing, like a farmer's market type of thing. Those are all types of things that would drive revenue. And then to help us reduce costs, that falls into the sponsorships, it falls into corporate fundraising for getting corporate funds in, it falls into volunteerism, helping to offset. And that was the biggest portion of your cost that I saw, Because we certainly can't burden our city staff with this because they don't have the bandwidth. You know, so the worst case scenario is what I saw on your page as far as the cost goes. So there are opportunities to offset all of that. I don't think there's one magic bullet. You know, I think the most effective way would be a combination of items, and that's gonna take some time to work out, and it's gonna take bodies to do the work for it.
I've got the mic, so I get to talk. I have a question about where does the city, promote itself as far as like travel and tourism and whatnot? Because that would be, a market, I think that we would, you, not me, would need to, look into. And I mean, I know, like, sometimes I get ideas, but I really do have this vision that Liberty, we're such a lovely, quaint little community, and like the community aspect that we were talking about earlier. I just have always felt like Liberty Lake should be the place where people come to celebrate the holidays. And I don't know why we, like, let's just do it. Let's just like make it the place that people wanna come, and they, like, the hotels are booked and everybody's at Winterglow, and pretty soon we're just rolling in, you know, Christmas cheer. But I don't know how much that the city is doing that outside of the county.
So to answer that really quick, the city has an agreement with Visit Spokane as the city's destination marketing organization. And so we pay them on a quarterly basis and rely on them to really get the city's image out to a regional footprint. And so to your point, there'd be more emphasis placed on that, potentially specifically to Winterglow, kind of in that space to get that out on a more region-wide basis and a higher effort of that specific.
All right.
I did, I was talking.
So we have reached the question up front.
Thanks, everyone. My question is that, Winterglow should be here, it should stay. Again, I echo the lady's comments behind me, that it is a community event. Secondly, if you want food vendors in there, you charge them to be there. And, you know, that's another revenue stream for the city. If you want to charge for a quarter of the profits they make, you can put that on there too. Trust me, if we have an event, the vendors will be here. I just would like to see the city keep this going. The one thing I have to ask is, if you need volunteers, you know, I'm president of Rotary. There's Kiwanis, there's many organizations here. Maybe a mini presentation could be sent to those organizations, and we can get folks to start to sign up. Because if I'm the president of Rotary and my person doesn't show up, I'm showing up. So I think if you want it to be more community event, you need volunteers to reduce the labor costs. That's an idea that I would share.
I don't know about volunteers, I know so much about, asking for volunteers on social media or any other platforms. So maybe we can make that, and then the school, schools, I know that National Honor Society members have to have so many volunteer hours, and we have West Valley, East Valley, CV, U High, Ridgeline. So we can market to whoever's in charge, like the National Honor Society at the high schools for volunteers.
We would of course do all of those things, if the city was in a position of being a producer to try to drive that cost down. That would be goal number one, obviously. To the extent that we could secure those and have those commitments, that would be what we were looking for. Looks like, or it sounds like we have another.
I didn't really want to speak.
your volunteer base is only as good as the person leading your volunteer base. And your volunteers knowing how the displays are set up, taken down. It's great to have volunteers. But when you get 40 people there, it's never set up before, and you only have 5 people that knows what's going on. Thank God I've had our board and a few other good people. That's the key. So I've always suggested, like Danny Chase, I talked to him personally. He'll do 3 big displays. The Enchanted Forest, he'll do the pinwheels, and he'll do the singing faces, the singing trees. He doesn't want any help. He will just do it. You know, and then of course Damien, you know, likes to do the gingerbread house and that whole area right there in front, the family kitchen stuff. So there's 2 huge displays that are taken. And of course, I'll come out and help, because I want you guys to be successful. And I've done it for over, probably my 12 years, so I kind of know the ins and outs of how the displays go up and come down. So, and to go back to your sponsors. The city of Liberty Lake is in a way better spot than the Winterville board did. Because we had to go out and ask for donations. God, Mark worked his ass off, got a ski line, and got a lot of donations. Mark got the donations for the fireworks on opening night that night. That was strictly Mark. And it just made opening night so much better. So he's done an excellent job there. But where the city says better is you guys probably buy $200,000 a year in fertilizer. Those vendors have a budget for this stuff. And I've been part of a lot of other events, and they're more than welcome to take part of their budget and say, you guys bought this much, we're gonna give you this much. So you buy lawnmowers and snowplows and Peterbilts and I don't know what, everything that keeps the city running. So you sit in a better spot with your donations than whatever.
All right. Anybody else? So we have reached the end of our questions, the formal questions, the lab. And so it is 7:25. We have the room budget for 8, we have the schedule posted till 8, so we can stay here till 8. Like I said at the outset, we don't have to. If anybody wants to continue asking questions or providing feedback, we'll be happy to do that. Is there any other comment, whether it was a question that you didn't see that you want to provide some insight on, anything else before we call it a night? Seeing none, oh, got one right here.
Mark, you had said earlier that the staff was going to recommend hiring an FTE to do this. Is the idea behind that things will be reallocated throughout the year so that there will be multiple staff in those 3 months to do it all?
So the idea, the rough answer is yes. I'm gonna ask the Parks and Rec team to provide some additional context there.
Well, I think at this point, we don't know what that's gonna look like. We haven't had any deep discussions on how we would move forward with the staffing. That's just one of the ideas that has come to the top, but we have to do some serious talking on how we would manage that staff. And again, what resources would it take away from things and reprioritize? Do we have to reprioritize some of our tasks? You know, there's so many unanswered questions right now.
So a little bit more clarity there. If you look at an FTE with just straight 52 hours, 52 weeks a year, 40 hours a week, you're at 2,080 hours. So you get a surplus if you hire somebody, but that surplus is spread throughout the year. So at the end of the day, we're gonna have to figure out a way to allocate our staff in order to best take care of all of the needs that exist. January through December to include this event if we were to take over its production. So just to echo Jen's point, we haven't done a specific analysis on, if John goes to this task and, Sherry goes to this task, but that will be what will be necessary in order for us to, assuming that the council makes a decision for us to take over the production, to confidently know how we're going to manage it throughout the course of the roughly 3 months that we're responsible for it every year.
I don't want to go back to what Craig was talking about earlier, to really have the city and whatever Liberty Lake, Winter Glow new maybe nonprofit group that I feel like there needs to be more of a collaboration and a cooperation there instead of it just being like solely a production of the city. Because like we were talking about how Kiwanis works with the city on the 4th of July, on all the events that they do, and I just feel like there's a better, more efficient way to have this work out than just the city hiring a new FTE to handle Winter Glow.
We don't necessarily disagree. The challenge that we have at this moment in time is if Winter Glow is going to happen in 2025, we have to assume that there is no volunteer help. And so of course we would explore all of those opportunities and try to leverage all of the partners that we currently work with on other things. And we would assume that some of those would turn into resources. But right now, we are budgeting for none of that to happen so that we know what the full cost is going to be in it, call it a worst case scenario. It looked like
But don't you think before that could be presented to council, or before, worst case scenario is even on the radar, like, couldn't the staff like reach out to Kiwanis and see, like, hey, are you down for doing this, or Rotary, or the Marla's Light Up Liberty Lake, or the Better Together Fund, or what else, the high school, like anybody else, to get like a partner on board so that we don't kind of feel like we have to have this worst case scenario?
So we, of course, have and can and will continue to do that. I'm not gonna speak for the board. The board has put a deadline of June 16th for council to make a decision on purchasing this inventory. And so if the board was willing to push that deadline out, board, we could maybe have more time to have those discussions.
Is there any legal or practical reason the city could not, through its website, have a public solicitation of donations for this event?
Kyle's gonna act like a lawyer.
So in the official capacity as Winter Glow is a separate organization, we really try to steer clear of amplifying any one entity over another through official city channels. If the city were to take this on, that would be obviously a completely different story. And so soliciting donations, I think, would be unprecedented through advertisement means, but I wouldn't be comfortable saying that it is specifically illegal until we get our attorney involved.
I think a lot of us are excited about this. It's June 2nd. We have less than 5 months. That's not much time. So this should have been happening. A lot of the organizing should have been happening months ago, right? So if we're gonna do it as a community and volunteer, we gotta get cracking soon. Because the clock is ticking, it's coming soon.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we were looking at the costs, that were up on the slide that you were showing, that was over a 5-year period.
Yes.
Okay, so in a single year, the average number, and please correct me if I'm remembering this wrong, the average number was coming out to somewhere around $85,000 a year, is that right? For the lion's share on staffing?
Closer to 90, north, little north.
Little north of 90,000 then, okay, per year.
Yes.
Okay, remind me again what the city's budget is
In total,
in total?
24 million.
24 million.
That's all in, right, everything.
That's everything, okay. So it would seem to me that 90,000 is a doable number to get after. In using a combination of levers to increase revenues, offset costs. You know, the question is that enough for our council to make a decision to move forward with Winter Club?
Since Winter Glow pulled back the name that the city would be buying, what would we call it?
That would be an open discussion. We haven't put any thought into that, but that would be something that we would need to consider at some point,
We can buy the rights to Winter Glow.
potentially. I mean, that's an option. Event X, I don't know. It would be something.
Being a member of the Rotary and also on the Community Engagement Commission, I'd like to encourage anybody who's in this room and cares about these community events to get out and volunteer in your community. Because just the membership we have is dropping. Fewer people are putting on the events with great results, but it's causing burnout, and that's what's happening with Winter Glow. People need to step up if they like the stuff in their community, and they need to get out there and get their hands dirty and help out.
Some more hands, at least one more.
I want to address the gentleman who said why Winterville Board had pulled their name back. It's strictly on a liability. We're gonna continue, we'll be in other places in the city. I'm sure we'll be out here. But there's a liability when you put these events on. And we carry $3 million in insurance, and we've never had a claim in 11 years. Knock on wood. And so that's why we pulled it back, was because of the liability side of it. You know, you've got yours going on Winterville, we got ours going on Winterville. It just gets confusing, and when people start doing lawsuits, you know, everybody gets tagged. And that's why and maybe you guys come up with a better name. You know, that's the best part is in the dialogue in the meetings, you know, you make it yours, you know, so that's why we pulled the name back.
Actually, my question is for you. Yeah. What's your name again?
My name is Rich Riley.
Rich, okay, Rich. So you said there's, you got a couple guys that wanted to put up 3 whole displays by himself, doesn't want any help, right?
Yes, he lives right here in the community in Virginia. His name is Danny Chase.
Okay, and then you mentioned another one, a couple others.
Damian Johnson lives right here in the community.
Okay, so.
Lenny lives here in the community. I can name a couple more too, if you'd like.
Okay, no, that's good. My question is, I mean, can we get them to like pinky swear that they will help us this year? You know, or.
No, they're in.
Don't worry, they're in.
They're in.
Okay, okay, because that would be a
No, they're in. They believe.
yeah, no, that would be a great help to have somebody that knows what they're doing.
Council has to make the decision before we can move forward.
Yes, Mark, I know. I just want to make sure these guys are willing to. Okay.
All right. seeing no more hands, we will call it an evening. And thank you for your time. And if you're interested in the next phase of this conversation, I would encourage you to tune in or attend tomorrow night's council meeting. There is a workshop on the agenda to discuss this matter with the council tomorrow evening. And so avail yourselves of that if you're interested in continuing to monitor this discussion as it moves forward. Otherwise, we appreciate you coming out. It's good to see you all, and I hope to see you again at another town hall in the future. Thank you.